Okay, so we're going to move on to Freya, which this is the goddess that I've been called to. And I think this episode has really helped me move forward in that journey, because I've always been really hesitant with it, because I'm like, well, I've been called to her for a long time. And it's just little things like having that dream about mugwort. And that's like one of her favorite herbs. And then I learned all about it, and I connect to my spiritual path with herbs in the first place. So it's like almost like she used that as a tool to get me to learn about her.
Right. Well, that's how it works.
Yeah.
And we're going to get more into that
Yeah,
a little bit,
exactly.
but you're on the right path.
Yeah. So Freya is one of the most worshipped Norse goddesses. And I swear I didn't even know she was a goddess until probably 5 years ago. And now I have lots of books on her. One of the books I have is called Book of Freya, and it's by Andre Raven Skolvenis. And Freya, Odin, the magic of Volvo.
Okay.
Okay, on track. She's a total balance of feminine and masculine, and I like to feel like I really strive for that as a Libra. I strive for balance anyways, and I really embrace my masculine side while also trying to keep my feminine side. So I'm going through her and kind of showing you how I connect with her. She's the mistress of cats, which we've talked about how much I freaking love cats. And I mean, Sahdi does
Omni's
too.
a cat lady.
Yes, for sure. And her cat's name were Bugle and Tragle. Her father was Nord, or god of the sea. She's the master of material manifestation, which I think is important. She has a boar named Hildisvini. It's funny because I feel like my daughter resonates with her and doesn't know it yet. And I'm not even going to say that to her because that's her journey, but she doesn't eat pig. And she's like, I don't eat pig because I love pigs. Mm-hmm. And she said that like years and years ago. And I was like, okay, this is a phase. Nope, this is forever. She loves music, spring, and flowers, and that's 100% me, and spends time with the Fae. And it's funny because I remember saying, well, I don't really resonate with the Fae, and I think it's out of fear. People's perception of the Fae and the rap that they get is that they're kind of scary. They're tricksters, which isn't necessarily wrong, but I think that my fear of them is out of lack of knowledge. So I was like, I don't really resonate with the Fae out of fear. And then I'm like, no.
Which is funny because I feel like you might have some Fae energy within you.
Oh, 1,000%.
I've
because
seen it before.
Look at this. Oh, I don't know if I resonate with the Fae. I have a fairy tattooed on my arm that I got done like forever, like 10 years ago. And then growing up, if you go through all my art.
So you're afraid of that?
Well, it's not. I feel
you
like
just don't have enough knowledge.
I have I have books on them that I haven't really dived into. But whenever you see somebody like, oh, I did a fairy circle, I'm like, don't do that. You're gonna be sucked into a portal. Don't do that. And I don't say that to them,
right? Because
if I don't have enough knowledge on something, I try not to speak on it too much. But that fear's there, and
yeah, the only time I'll tell somebody not to do something is like, and I still don't tell them not to do it, but I personally done something and it backfired on me.
Yep.
I'm like, well, I did this and it backfired on me, but maybe I don't have the backing.
Yeah.
Or, doesn't mean that you can't do it.
Right.
It's just, I'm going to warn you that this happened to me.
Yeah. Yeah, you are very much like that. You've never been like, don't do that. But the way you talk, you're just like, well, maybe you should think about this. I think that's one of the things I really love about you.
Thank you.
I drew fairies growing up. All the time, fairies and aliens. So I'm.
So you're connected.
I know I'm 100%. And if anybody that meets me in person, they're like, "Oh my God, can you slow down?" Any of you that are listening right now, I'm sure you're just like, "Oh my God." Sometimes I go to somebody in the morning, and they're like, "Can you calm your energy down?" I'm like, "No."
And this is you on Focus Tea.
This is me on Focus Tea. Yes, I made tea. We're drinking tea like we do for every episode, and I put lots of focus herbs in here. So like rosemary, sage. I put a lot of piney stuff in here, and I was a little worried it wouldn't taste good. Mugwort. And mugwort is very bitter, so I didn't go to my go-tos that I usually do to sweeten that up. But I actually really love it. So anyways, back on track. She wears a cloak of falcon feathers that allows her to turn into a falcon and fly between worlds. She's the chief of the Valkyrie. She really loves offerings of mead, jewelry, perfume, honey, mugwort, of course. And that's pretty much it with her. All I can say is that I was called to her probably 10 years ago, and due to, I guess, a lack of knowledge of how to really go about it, I haven't progressed a whole lot on it. I do have like a chalice with her. I have like during the full moon, I'll put like honey in it or mugwort and some of her favorite crystals and stuff, but I haven't moved too much forward. So one of the things I was really excited about this episode is hearing your recommendations on that. And I know you're going to get into that here,
Yeah, we
here
can talk
soon.
about that next.
Yeah.
We can talk about
Let's talk about it right
kind
now.
of right.
Yeah, let's talk about it right now.
All right. So I want to talk a little bit about how to find a deity or a god or a goddess to work with. I kind of look at it like they're teachers. And right. So when you start off in kindergarten, you have the really nice kindergarten teachers. They're really lenient with you. You have a lot of wiggle room to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And as you progress in your spirituality and you progress within the deities, gods, and goddesses and the higher realms, you're moving up in rank. So then you're going into elementary school, then middle school, and then high school, and then you're taking college courses. So if you're just starting out and you've never worked with a deity before, and I'm not telling you you can't do anything, but this is my recommendation.
Right.
I would start with like a softer deity that you're called to. Like for instance, I started working with Lord Ganesha, and he helps like overcome obstacles in your life to make a big problem into a bunch of tiny manageable pieces. He's very sweet. He's very almost like a high school teachers kind of take you under their wing. And
you recommended him to me because I told
actually
you
I have a tattoo of him on my arm. I have a shrine dedicated to him. And he's kind of easy to please in a lot of aspects. Like he likes sweets and pastries and different things like that. And when you're working with him, he will allow you to make mistakes within that. And you're not going to get criticized too hard for that. And you can do things with him, like instead of you can buy him pastries and stuff like that. But you could also honor him by going to the grocery store and only getting things that he likes. Or making a cake yourself. And as you're listening to it, like listen to Lord Ganesha mantras when you're in the kitchen and you're making him food to eat. You're honoring him in that way. And so you just learn to build your connection with a deity. It doesn't have to be Lord Ganesha, but you can find one.
With him, I just want to put this out there because you did recommend him to me, and I want that recommendation to be passed along to other women that are having trouble with male energy. Because I haven't connected to a male.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. I was like, I want to bring this up because I feel like it's really important because.
Right. Because a lot of females, not a lot of females, but there are quite a few that only want to work with female deities because they feel safer that way. But on a side note with that, if there is a female deity and she's depicted with her mates, like Kali and Shiva or whatever, if you're working with a female deity, you don't necessarily have to work with her counterpart, but you should acknowledge him.
Right.
When you come in, you're like, hi, Shiva, like, how are you doing today? I'm going to do some work with your wife.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think it's just respectful because if you have a partner, you don't want them to be excluded.
Right.
Male, female, whatever it is.
If somebody came into your house and just shunned your person.
Yeah, or called you to come over and help them, but you couldn't bring your partner because they were a male or a female or whatever the case,
depending.
So, have to pay attention to things like that too.
For me, I'm working on trauma with men, and I was saying I wanted to kind of try to connect to a male deity, and you would recommended him.
I would recommend him.
Yeah.
For sure.
He's a good starter.
Right.
Male energy. Okay.
It's like a big brother type energy.
Yeah.
But like you were saying, how you were kind of called to Freya, and you have been for a long time.
Yeah.
So I would pay attention to things like that. So if you're called, it doesn't matter what it is, what goddess, deity, if you're really just pulled in that direction, sometimes just doing research on them and opening yourself up. So I was doing some research on Athena. I was reading about her and just like had this idea pop in my head to go grab a candle out of my meditation room. And I knew exactly the candle that I wanted, but it was kind of like behind some things. So I go into the bedroom and I try to find the candle and I knock over this seashell. Pearls came flying out of it. And I was like, shit. So I'm like picking up the pearls. They're everywhere. They're on my table. They're in my windowsill. They're just like exploded all over the place. I'm like, where the fuck did I even get these pearls from? I don't even remember having these pearls. So I'm picking up the pearls and I'm kind of like, not pissed, but I'm just like, whatever. I'm trying to get this candle. So I finally got the candle, went out there, lit it, and I started reading about Athena again. And the very next line was talking about Aphrodite. As I'm reading about her, it starts talking about honoring her, a shrine, is to put seashells and pearls and things like that. I was like, oh shit, so that's Aphrodite
Yeah.
trying to get my attention because I'm open to that. Had
Yeah.
I not been open to that, I wouldn't even have thought twice about it. But sometimes it's like that. So I like to compare it to like metaphors. So say you're out playing basketball and you have the ball. And you might have a couple different gods and goddesses and deities around with their hands up saying, I'm open, I'm
Yeah.
open, you know. Doesn't necessarily mean just because they're trying to get your attention that you have to work with them, but they're letting you know, I'm willing, I'm over here.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get your attention. Pass me the ball and let me work with you. And then that's your decision. You have free will if you want to do that or not.
Yeah.
And they can also like come to you in dreams because I started having a lot of dreams about the ocean and stuff like that afterwards. And she's very connected to the ocean. So one deity can lead you to something else to lead you to something else.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful in that aspect.
That is beautiful. I know you talked about preschool, middle school, high school, college. I feel like through reading, I picked these 3 deities because I feel like Freya's my, I don't want to say grade school, I don't want to be disrespectful, but I feel like I'm ready for her.
Right. And she would be more nurturing with you.
Yes. And kind of teach me some ropes and stuff. But like Lilith and Hecate would be.
Yeah, that's how I felt about Kali.
Yeah.
So I understand that. Yeah, it took me a long time. Kali was like reaching out to me. And I even have, you know, shrines for her and my meditation room and stuff like that. Like I was honoring her, but I was kind of scared to work with her because I knew that when I started working with her, shit was going to change in my life. Things were going to shift. And I just kept pushing it off because I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
Even if you're not ready to start working with a deity yet, you can still honor them. You can still build a relationship with them and rapport.
Yeah, it doesn't mean
like
you're
that.
locked into anything.
No, and like with me, and I'll talk about that later, with me and Kali, I just decided to work with her for 30 days. And so you can also set like a limit on it. It's kind of like going into a classroom.
Right.
You're like, hey, I want to take your class for 30 days.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
they can accept or decline or whatever.
I connected with this woman. Her name is Terry Lynn Pellegrini, which I think is a cool last name. She has a shop in Lapine, Oregon. It's a Reiki studio as well. And her Etsy shop is Triune Moon. And I think that's the name of her shop in Lapine too. And she actually wrote a book, which is #goals, you know, and it's called Knowing, an Impasse Guide to Intuitive Development. And I ordered it, $8 or $9 on Amazon. Like I totally love supporting local people in the community. So me and her like actually talked on the phone, and you know me, I hate talking on the phone. And we had a FaceTime because I just kind of was putting my feelers out there, like who's had like an experience with a deity, because we had so much information and I just kind of wanted some personal accounts, or like, hey, does anybody want to hear about something in particular, because we have a lot of info. And it was such a cool conversation, and she had a couple stories that I thought was really cool. I asked her what her first experience with a deity was. She's very seasoned, and she's been that way like as far as she can ever remember it. She was like, well, when I was 9, and she goes, just to say, I'm blind as a bat without my glasses, and I got in a really big fight with my parents, and I was in bed, and I couldn't sleep because I was angry. And she was like, my door was open and the hallway light was there, and I look up, there was a woman with really long hair. She was wearing a robe. She had like books tucked under her one arm, and then she had a torch reaching out towards her in her other, and Terry freaked out and was like, Mom, the Statue of Liberty's in my bedroom. And it was Hecate, and she was 9. And
I just got chills.
Me too. I just got goosebumps.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, and it was Hecate, and she had no idea who it was, and it freaked her out. And her mom was like, "You were just dreaming." She's like, "I wasn't asleep. No,
right.
I was not asleep." And she said that was her first encounter with the deity, but she didn't work with her for a very long time out of fear, because she has a dark energy and she was too scared. But she did have like different things throughout her path that drew her to her. And she said, the more I read about her when I got older, the more I was like, oh, well, she was like a midwife and all of this. And she had all these intricacies to her that tied me to her. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. Because that's like our biggest thing on our podcast is like dissipating fear through knowledge. And she just literally said it to me. I was like, this was totally serendipity. She also was a part of like a coven at one point that they would do kind of what we do, but it was like seasonal, where they would all get together and research different gods and goddesses and then just learn all about them. And then some of them would be drawn to them and some of them wouldn't. And that's something she said that you said earlier in the episode, is that you can research a god or a goddess, or you can want to work with them, but it does not mean that they'll work with you.
Right.
And
And we were just talking about that, because I was saying, like, say you're like, oh, I want to work with the Egyptian god Thoth, right? And you're like, he seems like a really cool deity, like a god, and I want to learn from him and everything. So know your level. That's a big thing. So if you're still, we were talking about the level system. So on your spiritual level, you're still kind of taking high school classes and getting to know different gods and deities and learning more about spirituality. You might not want to go into his class because he's like advanced algebra and you're in high school and you haven't even taken algebra yet.
Yeah.
So when you walk up to a god like that, there's a couple things that could happen, you know? Okay, so a couple things could happen. You could end up being embarrassed.
Yep.
Because you don't have the spiritual knowledge. You haven't come with the proper credentials, pretty much. Like, you haven't put in enough effort for him to look at you and say, okay, I'll work with you. Not saying that he won't, because some people are just geniuses and, you know what I mean? There's different levels and things like that.
Your son.
But thank you.
Yeah.
But for the most part, if you haven't even done algebra in high school, you have no business walking into an accelerated, into a professor's classroom and thinking that you can work with them.
Right.
But if you're really called to him, you could start working with him a little bit, not really working, but getting to know him, building a rapport. You can still build an altar. Or
also, I think if you're pulled to a really high deity like that, a high level deity like that, I feel like maybe that could be an inspiration to do work with other deities to get to him. You know, like if you're in high school and you go into a professor's class and shadow for a day and you're like, I want to do that.
Right.
I want to be in this
And it
class.
might make you study harder and work harder and be like, okay, well, I'm going to come back in 6 months. You know, in the meantime, I'll still set up an altar for you. And when you do an altar for a god or goddess, or a high level altar, you have to be a little bit more picky on what you put on their shrine. You know, research them, find out what their colors are, find out what they like, find out what they don't like, what they represent. You want to put the freshest fruit on there. You don't want to leave fruit up there for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Get the freshest fruit you could possibly get, or vegetables or whatever it is, and put that on their shrine. You're feeding a god.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so you just want to have the utmost respect.
Right.
With that. So so I think that covers the 3 altar shrines that I was talking about.
It brings it back, ties it back to it, right?
So the ancestor, and then the personal, and then the deity.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she said, how did you connect to her moving forward? Like, you didn't know who she was. And she's like, well, Hecate called to me in energy synchronicities. Basically, she was saying, stop ignoring me. She's like, I was worried she was dark, but I learned she was a midwife and whatnot. She said she finally set up an altar and she appeared to her above the altar and she basically said, it's time. And that was years and years and years later, when she had worked with other deities and whatnot. And I said, what would you recommend for people who are wanting to work with deities? Like, what should they do? And she said, meditate, talk to them out loud, like pronounce their name consistently. She said, it doesn't matter if you call her Hecate, Hecate. And then she said a different pronunciation that I've never heard. Hecate or something. She's like, whatever you call them that consistently. Because if you call them by different pronunciation, for one, it may not resonate, and for two, it might irritate them. So, and then she's like, if you hear dogs barking, if you see owls, and then she's mentioned toads. She said she would see toads, and I haven't read where that is one of her calling cards, but obviously she's worked with her forever, like almost her whole life, really. She said she saw ravens and crows, which Hecate's daughter resonates with that. So that could be a tie-in. But yeah, so that was her story about Hecate.
Yeah, that can definitely happen too. Yeah, so when you start researching, a lot of times that's all it takes.
Yeah.
pick up a book about somebody that you're gravitating towards or you want to learn more about them and just open yourself up
Right.
to the signs. You know, like all the signs around you.
Right.
And you'll get the messages. You know, you'll sense that they want to start working with you, that things will line up, synchronicity. You're like, wow, that's a weird coincidence. But then they keep happening over and over and over again. Those are messages from who you are pulling towards you like a magnet.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
So
she's like, one time she was at a Dionysus and Morrison ritual in California. She said that Aphrodite expected through her.
expected?
Yeah.
What is
Okay.
that?
Okay.
I'm sorry. What does that mean?
When she was telling me that, I was like, what does that mean? But I didn't say anything because I wanted her to tell the story. And then she explained, it made sense. Basically, she said when she expected through her, she wasn't possessed. She was coherent in what was happening. So when a goddess expects through you, they are working through you, but you are coherent. You are you.
Okay, I know exactly what that is.
Yeah.
I've experienced that before.
Okay, wait. Tell me your story and I'll tell yours. Or vice versa.
Okay, go ahead and finish her story. I don't want to interrupt her story.
So anyway, she was there and Aphrodite started working through her and she would go and touch people and they would have an orgasm on the spot. And I was like, how did you not get jumped? And she was like, yeah, people started figuring out what was going on.
Wait, where was she?
It was a ritual.
She had a she was
No,
at
it was a ritual. It was a
Was
Dionysus.
she at the grocery store?
No, it's Dionysus. I
Okay.
keep mispronouncing Dionysus and Morrison ritual. So
Okay,
Morrison.
you did say that.
Yep. So she was there and she said that she started giving people orgasms on the spot. And this one guy came up to her and she touched him and his head flew up and his eyes rolled in the back of his head. And like he had a massive orgasm, right? Energetic, whatever. So the next day, so this must have been like a weekend thing. She said she went to a ritual the next day it's called Glyptos healing ritual. And she walks up and the guy she gave an orgasm to was the high priest.
He was the high priest?
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy.
I was like, awkward.
Right?
So I died.
That's probably why he was so receptive to it as well.
Because I was like, I would die. It might be awkward, but also like, who the fuck cares? Because like y'all were there, you know? That's amazing. Okay, I want to hear your story though.
Okay, so recently I was working with Kali. And she's a Hindu goddess.
Yeah.
She had been coming to me for years. And like I said, I was kind of afraid of her, intimidated by her energy because I knew that she meant business when I started working with her.
Right.
So I decided to work with her. And like one of the things that I learned from this goddess was that they can, what was the name of that word?
Oh, aspect
Through me.
Yeah.
And so basically that is what she did. So it was kind of like when I first started talking to her, I sat at her shrine. I actually got a table and a chair and I left it in my kitchen for 30 days because I made a pact with her that I was going to learn from her for 30 days. You know, set up everything for her the way she liked it. And I got a notebook and a pen. And I was channeling messages from her onto the paper. So she was asking me questions and I was asking her questions.
Oh, that's cool. Back and forth.
Yeah, it was kind of like a back and forth, almost like an interview. So she was asking me things like, will you allow me to push you in different ways mentally, ways you're not accustomed to thinking? And then I would think about that and I said yes. And there were some things that she asked me if she could do for me and I said no because I didn't feel comfortable with that. I felt like it was too strict. Like she asked me things like, are you willing to work with me for 1 hour a day? I had to think about that. And I'm like, yes, I can do that 1 hour a day for 30 days to learn everything I can about this beautiful goddess. One of my things that I wanted her to help me with was my diet, you know, just like becoming healthier and eating healthier and things like that. And she asked me, can I help you to crave healthier foods? And she damn sure did because I learned how to cook so much Indian food that month. And I was really craving it, like the spices and the seasonings and the cumin and like turmeric and all of that stuff, right? So I feel like she did come through me and actually like I was completely aware of what I was doing.
Right.
But she also had my exercises like belly dancing and like arm movements and stuff with belly dancing.
Yeah.
So sometimes we would sit down and I would write with her. And if I would write with my right hand, that was me. And I'd give her yes and no answers. And then I'd put the pen in my left hand and use it as a pendulum or kind of like a Ouija board pendulum energy.
Yeah.
And I could feel her hand go on top of mine and move it towards yes, no, or maybe. And that's how we were communicating. But when I was doing the belly dancing with my left hand, and usually my left hand is not as good as my right because I'm right-handed, my left hand was doing things that it never did before, like finger movements and things like that. So I could feel her inside of me, and she's like, move like this and do this. And so...
Were you listening to music when you did this? What music were you listening to?
I was listening to a lot of like Hindu type mantras, and like I had always called her Kali before. When I started working with her, I started calling her Kali Ma.
Okay.
And it just came naturally for me to say it like that. And so there was just like so many differences within my consciousness when I started like really working with her.
Right.
And another thing was, because I asked her, like, you know, how do I honor you with the food?
Right.
And she's like, give me half of everything that you eat for the next 30 days.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, I can do that. And then it got a little bit harder because she was like, but I'm a goddess. So anything you eat, it better be like good enough for a goddess to eat.
Oh.
So not only did I have to give her half my food, but I had to pay attention to everything I ate, because she's like, you're a goddess too. So don't feed me anything that, you know, don't feed yourself anything that you wouldn't feed me. And that was like a big epiphany within it. And I don't want to talk too much about the lessons I learned from her, because one of the things that she made clear to me was she is working with me on an individual level. Like, she didn't want me to tell one of my friends, because one of my friends also like has been called to Kali. And she was like, don't tell her what we've been doing, because when I come to her, it's going to be completely different.
Yeah.
I'm going to come to her with a completely different energy. A lot of times they have, like, you know, similar qualities, of course, because it's that same energy, but you might get completely different lessons.
With Freya, I feel like I have a mother energy, and she was a bunch of different things, and that part of her is what I feel from, you know.
Right. And it's kind of like that with Kali.
Yeah.
Also, because I was like really intimidated by her, because she's such like a dark feminine energy, and I was like, she's gonna kick my ass, you know. I'm like, oh my god. And then it was even weird because the way I heard her voice, she had an accent, and it wasn't as scary as I thought. It took 30 days. I worked with her. I learned a lot from her, and I'm so grateful to her. And, you know, I still give her little offerings here and there, but we closed the book on that.
Okay.
So she's like, okay, you had your 30 days, and that's it. But I still feel like I could connect with her anytime I wanted to, but she did mean business.
Right.
Like, if you're calling her into your life when you're having like a lot of things going on, and you call on Kali, like, oh, I want love in my life, and I want to feel good about myself, or I want to have money or whatever, don't be surprised if like you just found out that your husband cheated on you, and he has to go, and then your job fires you, and
She's like the Moldavite of goddesses.
Yeah, it's like she does have that commanding energy. So I had to be careful what I said yes to in the beginning, because she was asking me, oh, can I do this and can I do that? And I was like, yeah, not right now. Like, maybe another time, because she was seeing my energy and she was seeing what I needed, and she's like, give me permission.
And it was agreement.
You know, but I could feel, and it wasn't like a possession. It was like
aspecting.
I really like that word.
I knew when I told you Terry Lynn's stories, you were going to resonate with them.
Start saying that, because you're completely conscious, but you can sense that it's within you.
Yeah.
It's like you're embodying it, and you're working dually together. They're not making you do anything, but they're like, it's so hard to describe it unless you've actually felt it. But it was beautiful.
I don't know if this is aspecting. Some people have relations with deities, like sex with deities. And I know when I looked
that could definitely come. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
you,
go ahead.
But that could definitely come into play.
Yeah.
So Hindu goddesses, a lot of them do practice like tantric and sex rituals and things like that. So I didn't work with her in that way, but I kind of had a feeling that if I wanted to, I could.
Right.
That she would be open to that. And there are a lot of deities that will. So if they can come into you like that, then you can embody them, and together you two can have sexual experiences. Like, so it's not really sex with a god or goddess, it's sex with, you know, you're doing it together with them as one. Right.
And it's like energy. Yeah. So it's not like
she was teaching me how to do the hand movements and how to move my body when I was doing the belly dancing. Sexy. Made me feel sexy, but actually like moving my fingers in ways that I hadn't moved them before. So if you can imagine having sex, you might be having sex in different positions and different ways that you don't ordinarily move your body, or you know.
When I looked it up, I know like in ancient times, it was a lot more taboo, really.
Well, yeah, a lot of times if you say, oh, yeah, sex with deities, a lot of people will take offense to that and be like,
What?
you're not a god, you're not a god. You know what I mean? And it rubs people the wrong way, and it kind of makes them feel uneasy because,
Yeah, because they don't know.
yeah.
And I'm not going to say I'm an expert on it. I've never had that
But look at
experience.
nuns.
Yeah.
Nobody thinks nuns are bad, but, you know, I mean, some people do. But you know what I mean? Like, they don't think that that's taboo, but they're married to God.
Yeah, their abstinence from human sexual intercourse because that gives them a link to their deity or God or whatever.
I've even heard of people say, like, Jesus and
Yeah,
different
exactly.
things like that.
In ancient times, they called having sex with a deity Hieros Gamos. They thought when the earthquakes happened that it was gods in heaven having sex. And then it was like a ceremony, but it was way more widely accepted and more common. The term is derived from sacred marriage, first of all, Hieros Gamos. And they believe that it achieved a state of an enlightenment to marry. But it's not really.
Yeah, but I can understand that. Like after like my Kali experience and embodying her like that. Like I can imagine if I wanted to make her my number one deity and be completely devoted to her for the rest of my life. That would be tying into some kind of marriage type relationship with her that I'm going to work on myself. And I don't want any other, human relationship. I'm going to have one relationship with this one deity.
Right. And you did say, she was like, can you dedicate 1 hour a day? And I was like, man, that's a lot of time.
Yeah, but it was like 1 hour a day. Sometimes it would be writing, and sometimes it would be belly dancing, and sometimes it would be cooking authentic food, Indian food, or, that 1 hour was different things every day. So it kept it exciting.
Right.
Yeah. But initially when she asked me 1 hour, I was like, okay, like I'm going to have to study for an hour, or, you know what I mean?
For me, I'm thinking that's something that would make me hesitate, and I would have missed out on what you got to experience. So maybe think twice before you hesitate on something.
Well, maybe the same for me, because she did ask me some things that I said no to.
Right.
And so who knows, I might need to work with her again and pick up where I left off and answer yes to some of those questions. But it's, you have free will.
Right.
And so if you're not comfortable with something, you can say no.
Yeah, and they won't make you because...
No, and if they're trying to make you and force you, then you're probably not working with the right deity for you.
Well, I did read an article on different ways you can have sex with a deity, and one of them I thought was interesting was like masturbation, and you can dedicate a certain toy to that deity, which I thought was freaking amazing.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I never heard that one before, but okay. So you never use that toy for anything else except for when you're calling on that one. Ooh, and then you can give them an orgasm for an offering.
Yeah.
That's really dope.
I didn't think about that. Yeah, 100%. And we did a whole episode on sexual energy and power and spells and stuff. So that would tie into that. Number 2, you can do that on the astral realm. And then 3 and 4 are a little bit the same. 3 is stand-in and 4 is possession. So 3 is a stand-in, meaning that you have a partner that like a stand-in. So you're having sex with a deity on the astral realm, but in the physical realm, it's somebody else.
So it's like a blow-up doll.
Yeah, and it's not.
So you're imagining, and you're on the astral realm having sex with this god or goddess, but in real life you're just
having sex with Joe Blow from down the street, I guess. I don't know. Or your partner, I don't know. And that partner can be knowing, or they don't have to be because they're consenting to sex with you anyways. So it doesn't really change that. They don't get to consent what you're doing. You know what I mean? Because it's your body. So you're just in 2 places at once.
And then the other one is like a possession.
Yeah, the other one's...
I've actually gone through something like that.
Oh my God, please tell me.
So it was a long time ago, but I had channeled a woman for a client. They were lovers.
Wait, so the woman had passed on?
Yeah, she had passed on.
And the client
It was his ex-lover.
Okay.
And she came through in the reading, and she was very passionate about him and just saying that how much she loved him and she protects him, and he told me they had a really good sexual relationship.
Hell yeah.
That did come up in the reading. And then I had sex with my partner the same day, and I felt like I was possessed by her.
Oh, wow.
I would go in and out of my own consciousness. I could feel her kind of like taking over and then letting me feel, and then her taking over.
Was it okay, or was it...
It was kind of more like erotic for me kind of too, because I'm like, what's going on? This is homegirl's energy that I just picked up on, like, because I knew who she was because I had channeled her.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I ended up telling my partner about that afterwards.
What did he say?
He said he could feel something different within me. He's like, that was weird that you say that, because like this experience was like different than it usually is. It just felt different.
What were your feelings about that?
I just thought it was kind of like, I had to ask her to leave after that. I'm like, okay, that was fun. Thank you for that experience, but I don't want to do that anymore. And I had to say goodbye to her and close her out.
Which is fine.
I don't regret it.
Yes. Okay. I was like, it wasn't traumatic.
I don't feel like it was like traumatic for me, but I'm really open sexually and open-minded towards things anyway. I kind of just let it happen. I feel like I could have stopped it in the middle and been like, okay, wait, like something's going on right now. Like I need to stop this. But I was like, no, I'm just going to let it happen because this kind of feels cool and I know what it is. So I'm just going to let it happen.
I was going to ask, do you feel like you could have stopped at any moment, or did you feel powerless?
No, I didn't feel powerless. I felt like I could have stopped it.
Yeah.
But I was, I was so in the moment, and it just took me by surprise, but I just went with it.
I've never heard that story. That's amazing.
I don't usually tell that story.
She's being all open. It's okay. Okay, so the last and final one that you can do is dreams.
Oh, you got to be careful, though, the incubus and succubus.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you got to be careful because they're tricksters and they'll pretend to be other people, which I kind of thought one of the ones I would look up was Loki because he's a trickster. And so I'm like, what if I accidentally get a succubi?
Mm-hmm. Well, that can happen. That can just randomly happen to people too. Yeah. Like I heard about this lady that her husband was really into porn, but she didn't care. It wasn't like a big deal to her or whatever. And she was really getting into her spirituality. So she was doing yoga, like naked yoga, and he would go to work and she would just like be naked on the bed and open herself up and do kundalini things and breathing exercises and opening up her chakras and stuff like that. And she actually called in an incubus towards her by doing that because there was all that kind of lower vibrational sexual energy going on within her space anyway. And that, not that porn is bad, I'm not saying that, but this is how it happened.
But if it's a compulsion, then that's different.
And then she didn't really know what she was doing spiritually yet. So she was like, I'm wide open. You know what I mean? Just look at me and I'm sexy and naked yoga and all that. And so she ended up being visited by an incubus. And at first she welcomed it because they do appear very sexy, whether in male or female version. They are bisexual as well. So they can get anybody. And the difference is the male and female, incubus and succubus, in case somebody doesn't know. But anyway, at first she started to like it, and then she realized that her energy was getting like drained from this thing. She was like calling out sick from work. She was getting headaches. She was like, she had no energy at all. And she was like, whatever, because she said the orgasms were addicting. Yeah. Because when you have sex with a demon like that, they give you the most powerful, like,
they want you to come back.
Oh, yeah. And then they mark you, too, kind of as their own, so they know how to get back to you. And so, yeah, after a while, she just realized that this is not okay. This thing does not love me. It doesn't care about me. It is draining my life force. And when she tried to get away from it, that's when it showed its true form. And they were ugly motherfuckers. They are so fucking ugly. They got like razor sharp teeth and
they catfished you.
I'm not trying to scare anybody because explore your sexuality. Like, I've been possessed before. It's okay. It's not that big of a deal. But just putting that out there that you do have to be careful because if you're trying to if you don't know a lot. So if there's anybody out there that knows a lot about sex with deities, because obviously we don't really know a lot about it. Right. We're in season 3. We're going to have guest speakers. Yes. So if you're listening right now and you're like, hit us up if you want to,
We're just putting information out there that
chance to be on the show and maybe be an expert on this kind of thing, and maybe we can do a episode about it.
Or just let us know your experiences if you're comfortable with it. I did have somebody else say that's between me and my deity, and I'm like, that's totally fine. I'm not
I mean, I understand that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which and I think they said that's between me.
It's an intimate moment.
Yeah, deity, and I think that's how it is across the board. But I never like to speak in absolutes about other people. You know what I mean? Everyone has a different experience, and I think we've kind of gone over that with different deities have different experience with different people. So All right. I think that's everything.
I
It
think
was
it
a
is too.
lot.
Yeah,
I
I don't
love
think we
it.
missed anything.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us for our first episode of season 2. Tune in for next week where we share our past, our path, and our present, and keep your minds open.
Namaste.